This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. I'm joined by Spencer West. He's our author for our June author talks, and his book is Breaking Free: Stop Following Expectations and Start Following Yourself. Spencer is known for helping people challenge the narratives they've been handed. So this is whether from society or from family or even their own internal conditioning. And he helps guide them back to a place of self-trust, clarity, and personal freedom. Through Spencer's work, he explores what it really means to stop performing. Come on, guys, we got to stop performing this authenticity, right? We have to stop people pleasing and start making aligned decisions that reflect who you actually are, not who you were taught to be. So in this episode, we're diving into authenticity, the fear of being judged or abandoned when you choose yourself, and how that impacts your relationships, your community, and what it truly takes to break free from the patterns that keep you stuck. This is a very powerful episode, so let's get into it. All right, we'll have Spencer with us. We're so excited to interview you, Spencer. And I want to just start off for, first of all, people who do not know you, who have not seen you or seen any of your amazing content or any of your speaking, your YouTube videos. Let's just start briefly from the beginning, your background and your story.
Yeah, my name is Spencer West. I am a motivational speaker, an author, and a content creator. I identify as queer and disabled, and my pronouns are he, him. And I was born with legs, but I was born with a genetic disease that caused the muscles in my legs not to work. So ultimately, when I was a kid, they were amputated just below my pelvis at the age of 5 in hopes that I could use prosthetic legs and get around that way. But that didn't end up working out. So then I got a wheelchair and I navigate the world now on my hands and using a wheelchair.
And then your book goes into the story, but it goes into so much of the background of really sinking into being you and authentically you.
Mm-hmm.
And moving into that, I'm curious when you started to feel this contrast of like within yourself, what the authentic being you were, who he was, and where did you see this contrast? This is not who I am. And what age did that start? And when did you fully step into that?
Yeah, thank you. This is a really lovely question. And I had glimpses of, so I'll give you an example. The phrase that I heard so often from the doctors and medical team was, "Oh, you're just like everyone else. You're just like everyone else." And now as an adult, I realize how ableist and detrimental that was. But at the time I was like, okay, I'm just like everyone else. But then every time I went out in public, people would want to ask invasive questions about my body, about where my legs were. And so that was a confusing message of, am I like everyone else? Because if I am, then like, why are all these people singling me out and ask me these questions that they wouldn't ask anybody else? So that was like one of those little glimpses as a kid. Another was I'm in elementary school and I'm hanging out with a friend and we're like going through a magazine looking, it was like Tiger Beat. I don't know if you ever looked.
Yeah.
We were like looking.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas taught Tiger Beat. Yes.
Yeah.
JTT.
Yeah. So my version was a guy named Jonathan Brandis, who was like the hot actor.
Sequest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Tragic story, unfortunately. But we were looking through this magazine and she was like, "Oh, Jonathan Brandis, he's so cute." And I went to open my mouth to say, "Oh, he is." And before I could say anything, she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, but you're a guy, like boys don't like boys." And in my mind, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that was not okay. I guess it's not okay. So I had these like little glimpses of like, oh, I'm not fitting into where of these expectations, but that feels wrong to me. So I'll just like live up to them. But then all of that sort of really came crashing down when I got to college. And I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I just knew that I was supposed to go to college. That's like the American dream, right? You like graduate high school, you go to college, and then once you go to college, you get a degree and you can go out into the world and you can make a lot of money and all your dreams will come true. And then you get married and have a family. And so I chased that dream, but I got to college and I was like, I actually have no idea what I want to do. I just like picked a major, which was computer science, which genuinely I thought was like, oh, you just help hook computers up and set up networks. And then I like took my first coding class and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, this is not what I wanted. And so then I had to after my first year look at like, what do I actually want to study? What brings me joy? And theater was part of it. And I ended up finding a major thanks to a family member of communication because it allowed me to study theater on the side, but also do things like public speaking and journalism and broadcast journalism and marketing and advertising. And that was where I started to be like, oh, all this time I've been living up to the world's expectations and everyone else's expectations. And then when it was time to make my own decisions, I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And it was also around that time, I was going to college in Salt Lake City, Utah. And, there was a big emphasis and there's a strong religious background. There was a big emphasis on getting married and specifically to someone of the opposite sex. And I was realizing that that wasn't for me, that I was actually gay, and that to come out was going to be really important to me and to be really live in my authentic self. Because up until that point, I had never seen any examples of positive queer people or queer culture in general. I grew up in the state of Wyoming and we just didn't have that. I just didn't have that experience in the 90s. And, queer culture in general is still largely on the fringe, but it was even more so in the 90s. So that's where I really started to be like, oh, I really have to start learning who I am and owning it and living it in a way that feels authentic and real to me. So that was a long answer, but that's sort of how my journey started and where I really started to lean into who I was as a person.
Who were the examples of individuals that you either saw in the media or met in person that you felt really embodied this definition of authenticity and fully being in themselves that inspired you?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. One of my favorites was Rosie O'Donnell.
I love her.
Yeah, I was obsessed with her. I was obsessed with her talk show. I was in high school at the time when it came out, and I loved it. And it was like a bright light in what felt like a dark first year of college. I would race home to my dorm to watch her daily episode because she was just unabashedly herself, right? On her show, she was just herself. We'd never seen something like this in daytime TV before, where she would like shoot koosh balls into the audience and they had snacks and she had crushes on, men and women. And she wasn't necessarily out publicly at the time, but then eventually at the end of her run on TV, she did come out. And she was really one of the first people that I can look back to and think, wow, she brought me so much joy because she couldn't help but be herself. And she also happened to be queer as well. And so that was like a really nice start for me as for someone to look up to.
Yeah. Audience, just take a moment. Just think about that person or those individuals that you really either today are currently inspired by or that really lifted you. I think it's really important because we all have some sort of piece of that puzzle for each other in the world. And it's such a broad spectrum of coming out to be who we authentically are. And it can be very small for someone. Just, I'm finally going to dye my hair the color I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people who listen to this podcast, we are really highly sensitive people, either neurodivergent or we have some sort of orientation to being different in either our spiritual nature, our orientation sexually, or gender. What is that? The spectrum is so different for all of us. And I think that this time in the world, what I've noticed over the last 10 years and what really struck me about you is the same pattern I've noticed in just starting to see this gravitation from the collective to more and more individuals that are just fully anchored in who they are. Mm-hmm. And it's very different from who I am. I'm very brash and very direct. And some people that's not their cup of tea. But other people are still, the authentic nature of themselves shines through. Yeah. So I'm curious if you started to see this as well. And do you see this in the collective that more and more people are being drawn to authenticity? Or how does that also segue into some of the talks and the public speaking you do?
Yeah, I definitely think this is happening. And I think this can be one of the bright sides of social media is that people are allowed to show up and take control of their story and their narrative, specifically queer disabled folks. And I think that's been something that's been really lovely because I think what's helpful for us and what was helpful for me is to have an example of someone else so I knew what was possible. Although that may not be the journey I would take, like seeing Rosie O'Donnell was like, wow, it's possible to be happy. It's possible to be in entertainment. It's possible to be queer at the same time. And to just know that dream could be achievable if that's something that I wanted was so cool. And I think that's what's cool with social media. And that's what I try to do myself on social media as well is be the example of so often we don't talk about the intersectionality of being disabled and queer. That's really left out of the conversation. And so using my content to be an example of that and to share all the joy that comes along with that with me and my partner, and then some of the barriers that I experience as someone that is disabled and queer, I also like to show that as well. And so I do think in a time right now where we're so much of the world is meant to divide us and make us feel fearful. I think what's happening is folks are really leaning into their authentic selves because that's what, at least for me, that's what I'm craving. I want the people that are being real and not just happy and positive all the time, because that's also not real either. And so I think that's what I try to do with my social media. And I think that's why it's important for all of us to do that. So I would agree. I feel like the collective, people that are really paying attention are really doing their best to lean into their authentic selves, because it also makes life easier. I just found it made my life so much easier. And every time that I did the opposite of what someone told me and did what felt authentic to me, that's where the magic happened and where all the things worked out for me. So I think people are starting to realize that and are leaning into it.
I completely agree. And the magic happens when you lean into that. It's like the universe, life source, whatever your orientation to that
Totally.
intelligence is lining up and supporting you in all these ways. Huh. Yeah. Now, I'd love to touch on the obstacles that some of us have, all of us have, is either chronic stress or to the extreme of trauma. And having leg amputation such young, that young physical trauma to the body, and how that can dysregulate the system. So I'm a body worker, I'm a medium, and most of my work is working with helping people in a grounded, practical way integrate their nervous system so they can be online to their full intuition, their creativity, and how that connects us to others when we're fully connected to ourselves. And so I would love to know a little bit more about that process for you, and because your vibrancy and your light is so bright. And like, how was that transition, and how did you navigate through that experience for you to get to where you are now?
Thank you. You ask such beautiful questions. For me, it was I didn't focus on it in the beginning. When I became a speaker almost 20 years ago now, I moved to Canada to work for a non-for-profit because I'd gone on a volunteer trip with them to Kenya, and that's where I discovered, oh, I can use my story to empower people and to make a difference at the same time. It's not just a disabled person telling their story. I wanted to pair it with an organization that I cared about. And so I did that for the first 10-ish years and was really talking about how I lost my legs and trying to empower people to take action on things that they care about. But I also didn't, at the time, at that organization I was working for, I didn't really have a lot of autonomy over my life. And I was traveling 200 days out of the year, and I was really running ragged. And then I was at an event one night with a bunch of donors, and I was trying to talk to someone, and it was like I couldn't really hear them. And then they were talking to me, and I was trying to listen, but the room, I felt like I was inside a tornado and I couldn't grab onto anything. So I politely excused myself and went to the bathroom. And my Apple Watch told me my heart was beating too fast and I was having a panic attack. And that had never happened to me before. And that's what prompted me to find a therapist. I was like, okay, something's wrong. I definitely need help. So I started going to therapy. This was, like I said, this was only 10 years ago. So it's not that long ago. And it was through therapy and finding a spiritual practice that works through me and with therapy that I started to deal with all of this stuff. I thought losing my legs wasn't that big of a deal. I was pretty well adjusted. My family was really great and loving and supportive, but I didn't realize how some of that trauma had manifested into my own internalized ableism. And so many of the things that I was experiencing through my job was really contributing to not listening to my intuition and my subconscious and not dealing with those feelings and some of the trauma that I experienced with those major surgeries that I had as a kid. So it really took a lot of and ongoing support with therapy and friends and a practice that works for me.
It's incredible how much resilience the human soul, the human spirit has. And when we go through something like that, so much of my work is somatically based, is like what happens with all the spectrum of what we can do for working with trauma, and especially to the body. And so I'm curious, there is something, for those of you who might not be aware, there's something called phantom limb pain that you can sense a limb that has been taken away. I'm curious did you ever experience that?
No, you know what? I never did because I was born with my genetic disease, so my legs never worked to begin with.
Mhm.
So I assume that's the reason why, but no, I've never had that experience. I know lots of people do, but because I feel like I was so young and don't really fully remember my legs, I remember I hated to have my toenails clipped. That's the only thing that I can really remember. So for me, it having them amputated was like such a gift, and it made my life and made the world more accessible to me. So yeah, that was never an experience that I had or have had.
That makes sense. That tracks from my logical mind
Mm.
of if the nervous system isn't as developed there, there may not be as much even physical pain with the amputation. I'm sure there was during the healing though.
Sure.
And that's where I'm curious because when we go through something like that, everyone orients
Mhm.
differently and everyone orients differently to their circumstances, situations.
Mhm.
And you said you were talking about your panic attacks.
Mhm.
And sometimes we get overstimulated in
Right.
our systems. And whether we fawn, we people please, whether we move into anxiety, it's so different for each of us.
Mhm.
And I listened recently to one of your pieces of content. They were talking about being aware of your body and somatically. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I want to dive into this because it's such a big part of, I think self awareness is a mental process,
Mhm.
aware of your patterns, aware of your conditioning, which you absolutely go into in your book, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But then we expand that to awareness of then our physical body
Mhm.
and how we orient to that.
Mhm.
And then that expands on how we orient to
Yeah.
others. And what I'm curious about is I want to dive into the somatic piece for you, but how much do you feel being aware of yourself and even more so aware of your body? You're even more so aware of it because of the disability, right? And the lay of the land. How much do you feel that you have observed the public, the collective, people around you, when they're lacking not only self awareness, but awareness of the body, that they may lack awareness of other things in the environment that, of course, they wouldn't be aware of without a disability as well, the things that you can't reach and things like that. But how much do you feel like orientation to that self and the body really would, I guess the word would be, interpret into them being aware of their surroundings? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that a lot of disabled folks are good at because we have to know our bodies well because we know what some of our limitations are and what barriers we might encounter. So it's really important that we understand. And often our bodies can also be a mystery to us as well. They're constantly changing, like most folks, but I would say that disabled folks as well. And but I do think that disabled folks are a bit can be a bit better at being more aware of that because we have to be. And this is such an interesting concept that I talk about a lot in my content and also in my speeches is this idea that the disability community is the only marginalized community that everyone will experience at some point in their lives, either temporarily or permanently, whether that's now or as we age. It's statistically, it's hard to avoid it. And so I often push people to think more about accessibility now because although you may not need it now, like I do, there's so much accessibility that I need every day, you will at some point. And so what's
Yeah.
good for me now is also going to be good for everyone else in the collective later. And so the more that we can get people to be more attuned to their body and how they feel and what it can do and what it can't do and understand their needs to be able to then ask for that and advocate for that, I think the more universal our world can become. But I think this is something that disabled folks know really well because we have to, because there are so many barriers still. So when people talk about accessibility and that doesn't affect me, and I'm like, not yet, but it might.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
an important point for us to remember and not to be scared of that. I love being disabled. The disability community is beautiful, but this is a part of life and a part of bodies as we age. And so accepting that and being aware of that, I think makes it a little bit easier. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, yes. I just love the orientation and your explanation. Of course, like having to be super aware of the body and your surroundings. It just, that's the lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I am always pushing for education within our clients, whether they're injured temporarily, right? They go through the injury
Mhm.
or they're like, oh my gosh, now, or it's like a degenerative thing
Mhm.
with like, I have MS, whatever's going on. It's something that we're such a mental
Mhm.
society that we not only lose track of the physical body and the glory of
Mhm.
it, But then I feel like that orientation in the mental, we tend to be less aware of the physical surroundings a lot of times. I've noticed that. And then do we care much about the trash on the ground because we're not noticing it? We're in our
Yeah,
heads running around. And I think part of that is trauma. And then part of it, people go the other way. They become very hyper vigilant of the surroundings for
totally.
protection. So it does go both ways. But I love this conversation around somatically being aware and how much it gives you more opportunity to see what others may need as well and be in a relational field with others.
Absolutely.
When you use the word attuned,
Mhm.
I think that word is on my heart so
Mm,
often recently. The attunement to others, attunement to self. And it's a growing process that in this world, so much of my passion is community
yeah,
and
yeah,
people. And it's only in community that we can start to see reflection of ourselves and what we might need and start to attune to us and to others.
totally.
So
It's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's so important.
yeah, yeah. What the themes or topics, like when you are doing public speaking, are you talking about your book specifically right now? Or what are the things that are really lighting you up that seem to really be landing for people?
Yeah, there's sort of 2 areas that I've noticed that people are really craving these days, is just some general sort of empowerment or motivation. So that's a speech that I give a lot where I talk about 3 lessons that I've learned throughout my life, and this is mostly corporate audiences that are asking for this, not necessarily about how do we run our business better, but, like, what are some things that we need to know to be able to get through life? So I talk about the importance of asking for help and what that looks like. I a few years ago with some friends, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and raised a bunch of money for clean water in East Africa. And so I talk about that journey was only successful because I offered help and they offered help, and it was just this beautiful exchange. The importance of understanding that, like, we're all going to face challenges. That's actually just like a part of life. And if we change our thinking to look at them more as lessons to be learned and not that, like, the world is against us, and that's not always easy. Challenges are could be awful and stressful and scary and all the things, but they're given to us for a purpose. And it's really taking the time to drop into our bodies and be present to look at, like, oh, what was I supposed to learn from this? And then the idea of, like, how do we show up and create value every day? So that's sort of like what one speech is about, is this general empowerment of ourselves, which then translates to the people around us and our business. And as I know you know. And then the other one is the importance of hiring folks with disabilities and queer folks, and really breaking down the myths, specifically in the disability community, of why people don't hire us. And all of the statistics on, we have roughly the same percentage of secondary post-secondary education that non-disabled folks do. It's like making accommodations are not as expensive as people think, and really helping people understand that including disabled folks not only is the right thing to do, but it actually helps your business, because one of the large things is we're highly innovative because we have to be, and we represent a large population of people that are often looked over, both in a capitalist society, but also just in general. So I find those are like the 2 sort of things that people are grasping towards, and that I'm really liking talking about.
I think that what you said about, the hiring, I think it's really, really amazing, especially in the corporate world, to give that awareness. And I don't like to make assumptions, but I'll make a narrative based on what I've
Mhm.
experienced. And anyone who I've met who's gone through any challenges, and even any disabilities, we have a hearing impaired massage therapist, like the capacity and the resilience because they've been through challenges. And not everyone gets through those challenges. Like you said, you can stay stuck in this victim mindset. You can be in it for weeks, days, years,
Mhm.
or for a long time in your life. There's a lot of barriers to getting out of that sometimes. But when people do come to the other side of that, the capacity and the resilience is something that I, as a community member, as a team member, I look for that. I gravitate towards that. I want that because I want to bring more of those resources into our community to inspire each other and uplift each other. And I find so much value in a
Mhm.
team in that.
Totally.
It's just that's and especially now because again, I hate to generalize and make an assumption about what I've heard and what I do know in my experiences about the younger generation, right? There is a lot of challenges for them to
Mhm.
go into things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There is a lot of avoidance, and that's not all of them. I have
Yeah.
many, my son, that kind of thing, but it is a lot for that generation because of just the culture.
Yeah.
So I think it's really beautiful that you're bringing that in.
Thank you. I actually
Yeah.
would love to know. I have such a complicated relationship with resilience, and this is only in the last few years. Part of me is, it is so important, and it's like how we've progressed as a species, and also people always ask me the question after my speeches of how do you remain so resilient? And I'm like, I'm not given any other option. Like I either am resilient or I don't get to exist in society. Like society
Yeah.
is not set up
Yeah.
for me. So I also love the idea of could we ever get to a point where we don't have to be as resilient because we're making sure that everyone has what they need to
The
show up.
mutual care.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Community
mutual
care.
care
Yeah,
that we were saying. Yeah, community mutual care is, like, so much it's so valuable,
totally.
and the more we lean into that, more we're animals that need community and
Totally.
need connection and physical touch,
Mhm.
and I think that the more we get that, the more we can regulate, and the more we can feel safe, and the more we can the resilience. I love your perspective on it because I have the similar thing. My team always calls us, "You're our fearless leader," and I'm like, "No, I just am impulsively knowing that I have to keep
Right.
going." And, there's a lot of challenge in my background, lots. And they just were like, "Wow, you're just so inspiring." I'm like, "Well, I didn't like you said, I didn't really have a
Yeah.
choice. I didn't really have a
Yeah,
choice."
every day we were resilient or we're
So
not.
I love
Yeah.
this. And there's ups and downs, lots of it, but I really love that
Mhm.
perspective. I'm gonna meditate more on
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, speaking of your meditation
Yeah.
practice, I was like, I saw your little meditation corner you're setting up, and I was like looking at your books you had and
Mhm.
your Palo Santo.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about your spiritual practice. Like when you got into that, you said you entered into therapy, you got into your spiritual practice, and what that looks like for you and how that's supporting you.
Yeah. I would say for me, one of the things I do keep my spiritual practice just for me, but I'm happy to share a little bit of like the overview of what I found
Yeah.
works for me. Meditation became
Yes.
a huge part of that just to be able to drop into my body and be present. And I'm someone that has searched for I'm not looking for answers, but I'm searching for connection in that way. And I realize that I'm not going to find it in a traditional institutional sense. It's something that I'm going to have to do on my own and figure out what works best for me, and that's constantly evolving and changing. But yeah, for now, it involves meditation and a slew of rituals that work really well for me and some seated yoga in the morning and looking at how I can move my body. And then one of the other things that is new to me is like making sure that I get outside every day. That feels really important to me. I feel like I almost feel like I'm going to die if I don't like have some connection to nature at some point throughout the day. So that's been a really important piece for me.
Yeah. And how much are you also on the computer
Day,
for your work?
all day.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I remember during the pandemic and running a business, everything was shut down. There
Hmm.
was a lot more paperwork. There was more work to do during that time, and from an administrative perspective,
Mm,
that I just started getting overly sensitized to the
yeah.
lights. It was messing my melatonin production. I was really desperate for that nature connection. It
Hmm.
really made a big
Yeah.
difference.
It really does help.
Yeah. I want to go back more into the authenticity piece a little bit
Sure.
here. And first, I want to ask for someone who really is like, this is my goal. I want to be authentic. I want to really move into that. It's a process. So if someone really is moving into being their fully authentic self and they feel like they're still feeling a little bit misaligned,
Mhm.
what are some subtle signs that they could be still be living from conditioning that they might start to notice? Not out of shame, not out of sense of guilt. We don't want to put that, but what can help them navigate a compass of, yes, I'm really feel that I'm fully living it. How would they know?
Yeah, I mean, this is what my new book is all about, is how do we break free from those expectations and how do we find who we are or who we were. I think sometimes it's not about changing who we are, it's letting go of all of the things that someone else put on us, so that we can really look at who we are inside. And some of those things are, for me, it was like I got trapped in a job that I didn't like. This was before I moved to Canada. And I was like, how did I get here? So just asking myself, like, why am I here? And how did I get here? And then it was like, what do I want? And truthfully, I didn't know what I wanted or needed because I had never been asked that question before. So I really had to do some searching. And that part of that was asking the people around me for some help and guidance. Part of that was, for me, I like traveled to East Africa and had to get outside of my community. Not everybody needs to do that. But I think it's taking that time to really look at what are the things that like really bring me joy, or what are the things that I feel really pulled towards or strongly about, and then how do I start to lean into those, and what does that mean for me, what does that mean for my identity? One of my the big learnings for me in therapy was my therapist was like, "What do you like to do?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "What do you like to do, like, in your spare time?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And she was like, "We should probably explore that." And then I learned that I love to put together Lego. I love to crochet. I love to play video games. Like, all of these things bring me joy, and all of those things can help you bring you back to yourself and to figure out what it is that you like and where you wanna go next and what you wanna do. I think I've got a friend that's, like, really trying to figure out they're not comfortable in their job right now, and they wanna do something else, and they have the capacity to take a little bit of time off, and so they're gonna spend that time just exploring things that make them feel excited and see where that leads them next, and to really start to plan out, "What do I wanna do with the next part of my career and my life?" So, really, at the end of the day, what it is, it's just taking time for ourselves to be still and to listen to our heart and to listen to this the voice is always there, it's just whether we choose to ignore it or not.
I was a professional fawner, people pleaser, enmesher with people. And who am I? I don't know. I'm that person. I'm just like the group I'm hanging out with.
Tot
This was so much being as I'm all the Claire's as far as extrasensory as a medium, and so much of myself was losing this sense of identity of self. Which is happens when people are in mystical experiences. They lose sense of identity, which is how I actually step into this bigger perspective of consciousness and get information
Mhm,
from that perspective.
mhm.
So it was such a natural thing to just lose myself and be so attuned to others' energy and what they're doing and what do they like, that when I finally moved into me and my energy, and then for those of you who are listening who are highly sensitive, we talk about this a lot, that when you get into your body, you're embodied, you're in yourself, you also then are not picking up everyone else's stuff and
Totally.
not overwhelmed as empath or whatever you're feeling. But I felt like it took me back to what did I like as a kid?
Exactly.
I love to dance. I love to sing. I love to draw and I love bubbles. I just had a birthday bubble weekend. I was at
Amazing.
a retreat and my friends brought all these bubbles. And they were just 17 people blowing bubbles at me all at once in this big circle. And it was
Amazing.
so amazing. And there's just the simple things that just really bring me joy. And I love that you, again, you're getting in your body, feeling it, feeling in your heart, like you said, again, what it is that brings you back to you. And I'm so glad for that
Yeah.
you've experienced that too.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was, like, such a huge part of my journey, when I was stuck in
Mhm.
that job, I was living in Arizona at the time, and I was working at, like, a salon and spa, and I loved the people that I worked with, but the job didn't bring me the kind of joy and fulfillment that I was looking for, and so for 4 years, I just existed, like, really just assuming, "Oh, I guess you just settle for this," and then I was watching my friend and my roommate who I was living with, who was pursuing his passion of interior design, and he went back to school, and I watched his whole demeanor change, and I watched how much more excited about life he was, and I thought, "Wow, maybe I should look into, like" I used to love theater, maybe I should go study theater again, and so I looked into the same college that he was going, it was just a community college, and I started, like, studying theater again, and although I didn't pursue a career in theater, it reminded me about how much I loved it, and that joy brought me back to myself, and then that's what sort of then also sparked me to then continue to ask for, "Well, if this brings me joy, I wonder what else?" And having that wondering and asking those questions then ultimately led me to now where I am today, sitting with you chatting. But it's like being curious and breaking that pattern, and there's lots of activities in the book, about how to do that and how to do that for yourself.
Yeah, and so in the book, you do go into breaking through the pattern through these new experiences. You're having a novel experiences changes the conditioned thinking, right?
Yeah, and it gives you a different feeling. I was like, "Oh, I forgot what it's like to connect with the joy inside my heart and my body." And so that was like "Oh, this is something to pay attention to. My body's telling me that we like this. So how do we do this more? How do we find more of this?" And it was really at the end of the day trusting my heart and my intuition and listening to that voice that had never went away. I just stopped listening to it and turned it off. It was always there, and now I was tuning back into it again.
Yeah. What would you have to say to any individual that's stepping more into the authentic self, finding out what they love, and through that process, they realize that the community that they're around, the
Mhm.
people that they're around, either they're very clear, like they gotta go,
Mhm.
or this isn't aligned anymore. And there's like that pain or that sadness or this natural grief of losing people, or there's just this we're moving and growing apart. What would you say for people who are going through that?
I would say that's part of the process. And one of the things that really took me a long time to learn how to do in therapy was like to just be with those feelings and to give them space. I was like, I don't know, what does that mean? I don't get what that means. And now for me, that's acknowledging them. And I'll be honest, like yesterday, I was having a bit of a tough day. And so instead of trying to be like, oh, let's turn this day around, I was like, it's just a tough day. Let's just be with the tough day.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so when we
Yeah.
start to realize these things, we start to realize, oh, maybe this person isn't as helpful for me anymore. And ultimately, that's going to be a good thing for you to potentially move on, depending on the situation. But what comes with that is emotions. And one of the questions that I always ask myself that my was really helpful with is this a feeling or is this a fact? And navigating those two things and knowing, oh, if it's a feeling, great, we'll just be with the feeling today. But remembering that this isn't necessarily a fact. And so being able to sit with those emotions and understand that it's a part of the natural process of figuring out who you are and what you want and how you want to build your life and who gets the privilege of being in that space with you.
Yeah. And in my world, part of this empowerment state of consciousness, going into spaces of you feeling disempowered, it's the up and down of life, is I have this mantra that really feels true.
Mm.
Like even in the depths of my pain and fear, I'm just like, life is really happening for me, for
Mm.
us. And that I and it's so funny, like I really am fully in it when I'm saying it. And it's not even a bypassing emotion thing. I'm like, no, I'm in this right now, this pain or this sadness or this anger. And I'm like, there is something here to experience,
Yeah.
or maybe lessons and patience or forgiveness or letting go or understanding this person is not attuned and does not really deserve this much attention and attunement or love and care I'm giving them.
Mhm.
They deserve care and love, but they're not reciprocating. This is not aligned. And that awareness of life is happening. I say life is happening through us and life is happening for us.
Mhm.
That mantra has just helped me so much
It's beautiful.
to go into the emotions, to go into the body, and then know that sometimes it's just having a bad day, but it's always having the foundation of curiosity and having an experience.
Yeah, because if you
Yeah.
ignore them, this has been my lesson. If you ignore those things, they're eventually going to come back to you. Like you're eventually going to have to deal with
Yes.
them and it's going to be much harder and it could come in the form of some sort of physical illness or whatever. So being able to deal with them and name them for me then helps me move through them.
Yeah, naming it is very helpful
Right.
because then you have a conceptual framework around what you're working with.
Totally.
And it is, I think that we create or either gravitate to same circumstances, different
Yeah,
face, same job,
correct.
like until we have some sort of awareness within ourselves of, no, I deserve more or I want more. I have more capacity for this now. And it's just continuing the growth.
Yeah, exactly.
I just got excited because I saw my next question on here, and it's about relationships
Mm.
and romantic relationships.
Mhm.
So I'm in a stage of my life where I'm moving into a new chapter in my romantic life.
Mm.
And what's been interesting is I, of course, been exploring all my friends who are also in this journey. And there's so much in this. I mean, I'm 41 and I'm watching people who are like, oh my gosh, the dating pool. And there's so much pessimism that I'm seeing people around. And I'm going, there's so much opportunity to meet people, to know yourself, to learn about yourself. And so when you step into your authenticity and you're being more of that, so much learning.
Mhm.
But I'm really curious about how your authenticity impacted your romantic life, meaning Mario. He's super cute, by the
Thank
way.
you. Thank you. He is.
Like I say to people listening, whatever Spencer's going to say about this, I think it's important because we can get really pessimistic about
Mm.
anything. But considering everything, you have this hot guy, you have this beautiful relationship, and from what you're sharing, and I'd love to see how you felt like either that aligned for you or how your authenticity really brought that into each other's lives.
Yeah, a romantic relationship always felt like such a mystery to me. I couldn't figure it out. From my coming out to then trying dating and dating as a disabled queer person, as far as gay men go, there's such a stigma around what your body should look like and how you should interact in the world. And so many queer spaces are inaccessible to me. So dating in general just felt like such a slog. And so that was one piece of it. And then the other piece was and I feel like a lot of people in my life have related to this as well, and maybe folks that are listening and are watching will feel the same. I think what I was doing, I was trying to get someone else to tell me that I was worthy of love, and it wasn't working for obvious reasons. And it wasn't until I went to therapy and then started to explore this side as well, that I realized I was like, "Oh, no one can give that to me. I have to give it to myself first." And I had to really get to a place where I was good with me, where that if I met someone, it would be amazing, but if I didn't, I loved just spending time with myself, and I had great friends, and I loved where I was living and all the things, and I got to this place where I was like, "Cool, if this happens, it will be fantastic. But if it doesn't, I'm actually okay with that. I really like my life. I can bring the love that I need to myself." And the minute that happened, that's when I met Mario. Um,
Exactly, exactly. Oh my god.
yeah.
That's it. We talk whether it's prayer or law of attraction or whatever people believe in
Mhm.
this interesting universal patterns.
Yes.
I say we read patterns. There's a pattern here. People trying to have a baby, can't have a baby. Give up, the baby comes. Oh my gosh, trying to get a new job forever. Give up, the job comes. It happens with romantic relationships
Yeah.
too. And I think it's that the key and the magic is what you just said. And I picked up this book about a decade ago that I loved. It's called Soulmate,
Mm.
spelled
Oh.
SOLEMATE. And it's exactly that, like, when you're fully just in love with yourself and really embodying you and authentically you and really just content, it shows up. So I'm curious for you, what happened for you that you either maybe truly saw yourself, saw your worth, saw your value? What was there anything that specific that flipped for you, or maybe it was a couple things that really got you into that place?
I think it was just the realization that I am able to create my own love and happiness for myself, and learning how to do that, and really, again, dropping in and paying attention to what was happening in my life. It was like, "Oh, I I grew up in a time where, and it still exists to this day, where disabled folks are not seen or typically talked about as being attractive in just the sphere in general. And being queer and disabled, that also made it challenging. And my family would say that I was handsome, and people would say that to me, but I was like, "But you're my friends. You have to say that." I feel like it didn't land for me. And when I started to lean into the idea that, like, oh, maybe I am attractive. Maybe I am handsome. Maybe these things, and I don't know if everyone notices this, but in all of my content that I create, I always do a description for accessibility. And at the end, I always write a sentence where I say, "Obviously, Spencer looks very handsome throughout this entire video." And that's because I realized that if I started saying it, I would believe it. And then I did start to believe it. And now I continue to say it for me, and also in hopes that other people will see it and start saying it for themselves. My dad growing up, he has this one joke that he tells everyone. My dad is such a character. And he'll say, "Oh, I can't wait for tomorrow." And then when you reply, "Oh, why?" Because he says, "Because I get better looking every day." And as a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is so annoying." And he says it to everyone over and over again. And then in therapy, I was like, man, my dad has been like the epitome of self-love and positive self-talk my entire life, and I missed it. And so it was just really saying it until I believed it. That's really what helped me understand that I was attractive and that I was worthy of these things, and whether I got it to some from someone else didn't matter. I felt it and I believed it. And that's when things changed.
I This is so divine timing for this conversation and what you just shared there. I had this experience over the weekend. I went again, I had my birthday weekend. It was a meditation retreat with
Mm,
17 folks that I've known for many of
mhm,
them I've met for before. And it was just like coming home to family. And I had this experience over the weekend of seeing myself almost for the first time. Now,
mm.
in this really abstract way of seeing myself from outside of myself, not only what I looked like, but how I moved and how my essence was. And I looked at my friend and I said, "I'm really feminine." She goes, "Yeah." And I was like, I never thought of myself as a feminine being
Interesting.
because I've held so much of the masculine role being a single mother,
Mhm,
being like holding up this business and having a lot of responsibility. And I never identified or experienced that before.
mm.
And I just set into it. I felt like I could see myself for the first time. There was so much joy. And I was like, and not in a performative way of, oh my God, I'm so amazing. It
Totally.
was just like, wow, what an amazing being. And then I looked around at everyone because I came out of this deep meditative state. I was looking around. I looked over at my one friend. He was sitting there and he just looked into my eyes. We looked into each other's eyes very deeply because I was just like, wow, I see clearly so many people as a medium, who they are, and
Yeah.
how much, why I love authenticity so much is I've always seen the true nature of a person and behind the masks they wear. And I just want to connect with that.
Yeah.
And so why I love to see that come out of people is because then I can finally feel we can connect on this intimate layer
Totally.
that is truly who they are.
Totally.
And when I looked at him, I feel like I could see even more clear the being who
Mm.
he was.
Mhm.
And he started tearing up.
Mhm.
And I had not expressed what I had just experienced, but he looks at me and he said, it was like 2 minutes of looking each other's eyes deeply. And he said, I feel like someone for the first time has just finally seen
Mm.
me. And I just gasped because I said, oh my gosh, I feel like I just finally saw myself. And this is now expanding out in some sort of weird mystical experience to you. How beautiful. And what happened the rest of the weekend is people just kept saying to me, Kara, you're so beautiful. Oh my gosh, you look just this beautiful, radiant. And I just
Mm.
thought, wow, I'm seen. I finally, and it's not about, oh, I want people to see me. It's I've seen myself.
Yeah.
This is what I've really always wanted. And I think that part of that is it has been the foundation of being inauthentic to my
Yeah.
personality, but then fully being able to feel it as an essence and on a visual level somehow in this context, it just really made a difference. And you know what? I bet you anything within a matter of a couple weeks, there's going to be someone they're going to pop into my life. I'm like, oh my God, there you are. There's my Mario.
Totally. Totally.
It's going to happen.
And I think
Because I don't,
oh, please.
no, I don't need it. I don't need it anymore. It's like I'm seen
Yeah.
by me.
Yeah. Yeah, and all that you are and all of the beauty and the feminine and is so lovely, and I think that's such, like, a powerful experience. It's so funny that you bring that up because I had something similar just a couple weeks ago. I went on, a retreat with my friend in Australia, and I met him when I moved to Canada. We were both sort of immigrants here to Canada working at the same organization, and he and my other friend, we've been sort of a trio, and we've stayed in touch. We use the app Marco Polo. We chat to each other every day. It's like we live journal so we can stay in touch with each other's lives because I love the day to day. I want to know what you're doing day to day. I want to be involved in that. So we went on a retreat together and we did eye gazing for the first time. And if for those who aren't familiar, you just kind of sit in front of someone and just look in each other's eyes. You don't say anything unless you feel compelled to do. And he and I had never done that before. And he identifies as heterosexual, so it's not a romantic thing by any means. But I remember I sat down and we'd never done that before, and he was like, "Oh, we've never." And it was so random. We were in a group of like 18 people, and they were like, "Okay, go around the room and find someone to connect with." And so we both looked around, and everyone had found someone except us. And we're like, "Okay, well, yeah, let's do it." So he was like, "We've never done this before." And the minute I looked at him, I burst into tears. And then I said to him, I was like, I remember I was thrust back to when we became friends. I was like, you were the first person that saw me as like not only as who I am, but also like we grew up in the same era. We had the same enjoyment in pop culture. And I was like, you made that connection for me when I felt like I didn't know anyone. And I was like, I never put that together until just now, having the time to just stare at you, you looking at me. It was like, oh, that's what you did for me. That's what our friendship was built on. So it just was so interesting that you brought that up because that just happened to me.
It's aligned. It's so aligned
Mhm.
because the deepest desire, I believe, of humanity is to be seen and to be heard and understood so we can feel held by each other. And we cannot do that until we can fully embrace our authentic self and be in that. And so much the work that you are offering and your book, like that is it. You're doing it. You're one of the many army of people out there that I know are presenting their version of how we be in this authentic being.
And that it's
So it's so
possible and
incredible.
that we can do it. You know what I mean? If I can do it as like a queer disabled person, like we can do it. And hopefully my new book, Breaking Free, will help people start that journey of figuring out what that is for them.
Yeah. And usually what happens is people then start to spread it.
That's the
They
hope.
do their own journey of it.
Yeah.
My next question is, how does authenticity and social impact work together when it comes to creating real change in the world? How can someone, whether they have privilege or not, wherever they're coming from, how can they use self-awareness to better support humanity with their journey?
Yeah, I think when you show up as yourself, you unconsciously allow other people to do the same. I think it was a Martin Luther King Jr. quote where he said something along those same lines. When you share your story and give permission, then you unconsciously allow other people to do the same thing. And so I found the times that I'm most inspired by people is when they are living their most authentic life or leaning into a truth that's really important to them. Then that forces me to do the same, or it gets me excited to do the same thing. And I think when we know who we are, we also understand how we can show up and how we can give back at the same time. And I think that's the beauty of what comes with authenticity or exploring what that is. And we may not ever get to full authenticity, but the idea that it can change and grow and that there's more layers that you can explore, I think that just empowers other people to do the same thing. And that's the hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree so much. And the playbook for what that authentic expression of your gifts your is all different, and it's all inside when you open that the key to the palace of what who I really am. And that's that you have to go through challenges and fear and the discomfort of moving out of the social conditioning and your background.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have two more
Sure.
questions that I ask anyone who's been on our podcast for the first time, and then but before I go into those, I have one final question
Yeah.
here. If you feel that someone today would just fully lean into choosing themselves, thing you feel like they could do.
That's a good question. My immediate thought went to is to be reflective and to look at what am I learning and how do I use that? That's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know if that fits with what you're asking, but that was my initial thought is I like this idea of what am I learning and why is that
And that
important?
connects to everything. Because if you know what you're learning, it's going to be unique to you. And it's going to be connected to all the other challenges, all the other strengths and things you already have that are part of your authentic nature. And if you can ask that question and connect it in as a system of all the other things you have come before you, I think that makes so much sense because
Uh,
it's unique to you.
Totally. And the other thing that I would say is if you've starting to discover that authentic self that is free of those expectations, it's now how do I lean into it? What's the thing that I can do next? So now I've discovered it, how can I actually live it?
Yeah. Yes. That's totally there's stages there.
Yeah.
I do feel that there's the last 2 years, it's been really I was hiding so
Mm,
much behind administration. I was hiding my light. I was hiding so
mm,
much because of the for just a couple years and share it with you guys, the audience. They're like, "Wait, you do this podcast. We see you in the community." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's a lot of my gifts that were hidden." I
mm,
live in a really conservative town. Being a medium, there was death threats. There was a lot of this
so
stuff
sorry.
for conservative religious folks, and that was part of the journey,
Yeah,
right? Part of going through being villainized, being projected upon, and then the other end of it was being projected upon as pedestaling. Oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And I said, no, we don't want that.
yeah,
It's we are all here with equal gifts. And it's part of this journey has been really coming out into it and really sinking in through the discomfort
yeah.
and moving out into it.
Mhm,
And I love what's been coming and people like you showing up on
mm,
like you said, everything gets easier. The flow, the more authentically you step
yeah.
in. And listeners, I know you've seen this. You're like, wow, you guys are having such incredible, amazing guests, and things are just taking off. I'm like, you know why? Because I'm being fucking real and authentic, even more so than I ever have. And I'm just going to keep on
That's
going. And
right.
I hope that we continue to inspire you to do the
Yeah,
same.
exactly.
So here's the two final
Yeah.
questions. The first one is currently in your life, what is your favorite self care or product or thing that you're like, really, this is my special treat to myself? I'm loving this right now and it's bringing me extra joy in my life.
Yeah, my rituals in the morning and Lego. Lego just brings me so much joy. And in fact, my friend and I have a once a month we do this thing called Bricks and Bullshit, where we get together and we each bring either the same Lego or two different ones, and we have dinner and we build the Lego together and we put on some pop culture TV in the background and just chat. So right now, that's like one of the things that I'm loving doing.
I love that. What Lego set are you working on currently? Anything particular? I got the flowers ones that I was doing over
Oh, the
Christmas.
flower ones are
The
so good.
flowers.
I just bought the
Yeah.
old school Batmobile from like the 1960s Adam West. So that's the one I'm going to be working on next.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. And then this is the final
Yeah.
question. And because the podcast is called Mind Body
Yes.
Detox, and it's really about what are we reading in our mind, body, or spirit that we need to like really clear.
Mhm.
So if you could clear or detox, if you want to call it that, one thing in either your life or the world right now, what would that be?
Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
I wish I what I would like more of is the lack of empathy. Like I would love more empathy. So if we could detox the lack of empathy that I feel like so many people are experiencing right now, I think that would be huge. There's also part of me that wants to be
Fantastic.
like and folks that don't believe fact anymore, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like leaning into what's
No, I
true.
said leaning into what's true and really allowing our hearts to open.
Mhm.
Because I said as an empath, people really struggle with who are very sensitive and are having such compassion and compassion fatigue
Mhm.
for the world. Oh my gosh, I got to continue to care. I'm so drained.
Totally.
And the love continues to pour through these individuals, which is incredible. But
Mhm.
I said, wouldn't it be crazy to think about if tomorrow that a light switch just came on and everyone just all of a sudden had either empathy or being empathic, like a
Mhm.
hive mind. I feel your
Yes.
pain. Oh man, let me help you because I
Yes.
feel it. I sense it. Let's mutual care would just automatically
Yes.
be a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that
Yeah,
answer.
thank you.
Yeah. I am really excited. Guys, listeners, I know I said this at the beginning, but just as a reminder, Spencer is going to be joining us in June. It's Pride Month in June,
Yes.
and your book is already out in May.
Yes.
So we're going to be chatting about your book. We're going to be asking you questions live.
Awesome.
And so those of you who can join us either in person at New Visions Books and Gifts, Metaphysical Bookstore, has been open since 1987 here in York, PA. My cosmic dads, both in the queer community, they've been amazing pillars of spiritual
Mm.
enlightenment and support. And they are, of course, opening up their doors for all of us to gather there. And you can join online. So if you can't get away from your children, your kids, and you're on the other end of the country, you can join us and ask questions about the book. And so I highly encourage you guys to pick it up at the bookstore or online. And you read the book for your audiobook,
I do,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a treasure. So that's also an option. But that is going to be in June, for Thursday in June at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have, again, sign up for free. It's absolutely free. But other than that, Spencer, I'd love to have you just take a moment. What else is coming up for you? How can we learn more about you, follow you, and anything really special that the audience should tune into that's coming up for you soon?
Yeah, you can always check me out on all social media platforms at Spencer the number 2 the West.com. I'm just giving you my website too, but Spencer to the West is my handle on all social media. On my website, Spencer to the West .com, and that's the big stuff right now. Just getting this book out into the world and sharing it with as many people as possible that feel, if you've got someone in your life after you've read it, or that when you read the description, like, oh, this could be helpful for someone, please pass it along. What matters to me at the end of the day is not necessarily what matters to me most is that it gets to the people that it needs to get to. And so
Yeah.
I think I would love all of your help with that.
Yes, yes. And I consider this a gift to the world for not just the content from the book, the content from your YouTube channel, your Instagram channel, TikTok. I think people often forget, and I'm going to remind everyone again, give you full on permission to share this podcast episode. Anything you see, I feel like too often we're like, oh, that was really cool, but I don't know. I might be bothering my friend if I'm sharing this, or maybe I'm sharing too many things. And that's sometimes a relational field experience that people have where they're sending memes, they're sending like all these little
Totally.
shorts that they find on Instagram to their friends. And I'm like, keep doing it.
Yes.
The more we have these little bits and pieces that can continue to uplift and inspire, because it's really challenging out
It
there.
is.
So
It is.
I encourage you, please check out the book, share it with others. And I think that's all we can do. Continue to uplift and inspire each other and mutual care.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Spencer, for being
Thank
here with us.
you.
It's such a pleasure.
Likewise.
I'm so grateful.
Likewise.
Yeah. Everyone, again, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, and be well until next time, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.